Let's talk about a myth that's been quietly shaping nonprofit culture for far too long. The idea that working in the nonprofit sector means you should accept being underpaid, overworked, and endlessly grateful just to be included. It's the belief that your passion for the mission should replace your paycheck, and that asking for more makes you less committed to the cause. But let's be clear, passion doesn't pay the bills. Believing in the work doesn't mean you should sacrifice your financial stability or personal well being. Yet somehow, nonprofit employees have been fed the idea that their value is measured by how much they're willing to give up, not how effectively they do their work. We hear it all the time. You don't go into this field to get rich, or you're here for the right reasons, not the money. These lines get tossed around like truth bombs, but they mask a much larger issue, a systemic undervaluing of nonprofit professionals. Somewhere along the line, working in this sector started to resemble a vow of poverty. Entry-level case managers, outreach workers, program assistants, and administrative staff are often making barely enough to cover rent, let alone invest in their futures. Meanwhile, expectations continue to rise. More hours, more responsibilities, more emotional labor. And what's worse is that this myth isn't just harming the people doing the work, it's undermining the work itself. Burnout is rampant. Staff turnover is high. Good people leave not because they've stopped believing in the mission, but because they physically and emotionally can't afford to stay. We need to stop romanticizing struggle. Low wages are not a sign of commitment. Living paycheck to paycheck shouldn't be a requirement for serving your community. And nonprofit work should never come at the expense of the well-being of the people doing it. Here's what's often overlooked. Sustainability is a justice issue. When we expect people to sacrifice their financial security in order to serve others, we create a sector that's only accessible to those who already have a safety net. People from working class backgrounds, single parents, those with student debt, or caregivers are often shut out, not because they lack passion or skills, but because the economics just don't work. And let's not forget, the communities we serve notice this. When our staff is burned out, turnover is high, and morale is low, the people who rely on our services feel that instability. Mission-driven work requires stable, healthy, and supported people behind it. We cannot pour from an empty cup. This poverty mindset doesn't just affect staff, it shapes how we design programs, write grants, and structure organizations. We cut corners to make budgets work. We undervalue infrastructure, training, and leadership development. We rely on unpaid interns, overworked employees, and miracle-level time management to keep the wheels turning. It becomes a cycle of scarcity that limits our impact. Let's be honest, the nonprofit sector often survives off the unpaid labor of its most dedicated people. People who show up early, stay late, and wear multiple hats without ever getting compensated fairly for it. That's not a sustainable model. That's a system that preys on passion. We also have to talk about how this myth disproportionately affects women and people of color, who are overrepresented in frontline nonprofit roles and underrepresented in leadership positions. They are often asked to do more emotional labor, provide cultural competency, and carry the weight of entire communities without equitable pay or decision-making power. That's not just unfair, it's exploitation. So what needs to change? Everything about how we value nonprofit work. We need to normalize living wages, comprehensive benefits, paid time off, and boundaries. We need to shift away from the idea that nonprofit equals scarcity and toward a model that honors both impact and equity. Nonprofit leaders, boards, and funders must step up. Budgeting for fair compensation isn't a luxury, it's a responsibility, and staff shouldn't have to feel guilty for wanting a livable income. We shouldn't glorify the person who skips every vacation, works weekends, and answers emails at midnight. That's not commitment, it's unsustainable. If we want to attract and retain talented, passionate people in this field, we have to start treating nonprofit professionals as exactly that, professionals, not martyrs, not volunteers with titles, professionals who deserve respect, support, and compensation that reflects the importance of their work. So let's say it loudly. You can care deeply about your work and still expect to be paid well. You can be mission driven and still need health insurance, retirement contributions, and time to rest. You can love your job and still want a life outside of it. We need more leaders in this sector to speak up, challenge these outdated norms, and role model a better way forward. When you push for fair wages, take your paid time off, or prioritize work life balance, you're not being selfish. You're reshaping the culture, and that's what we need. People willing to set new standards for sustainability, not just for themselves, but for the next generation of nonprofit leaders. Because the truth is, we can't afford to lose more good people to burnout. We can't afford to keep sending the message that you have to choose between purpose and pay, and we absolutely cannot keep building a sector on the backs of people who are running on fumes. Passion should never be used as a substitute for fair pay, and the sooner we dismantle the nonprofit poverty myth, the sooner we can build a sector where doing good doesn't mean going without. If any of this resonates with you, if you felt the pressure to prove your dedication by sacrificing your well-being, or if you've struggled with the guilt of wanting more for yourself in the nonprofit sector, I want to hear from you. Have you noticed this dynamic in your workplace? Have you ever felt like you had to choose between the mission and your own sustainability? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts or experiences, because the more we talk about this, the harder it becomes to ignore. Let's make this conversation louder. And if you're ready to help challenge these outdated expectations and advocate for a healthier, more sustainable nonprofit culture, hit subscribe. There's more coming, and I'd love to have you here as we push for the change this sector so desperately needs.